Hi, Tom.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good to see you.
Good to see you. Okay. I'm going to spotlight you. Okay, and you are good to go.
All right, let me just get that up. Let me know when you can see those slides.
Yep, I got you.
Okay, perfect.
And we can see them.
All right, great. I'm just going to run it like this because I've been having problems with full screen, but thank you for having me. My name's Tom Weinert. I've been recruiting for about 15 years. I used to run internal TA for a pretty large firm for a while, and then recently, last 3 or 4 years, started my own business with my wife. So what we want to talk about today is process is greater than technology, creating a culture of hiring with executive buy-in, even if you're just a team of one. So first, I want to say that I absolutely love recruiting technology. It is what's been happening in the recruiting tech space in the last 5 to 6 years has been amazing. And there's truly some great products out there. And this is by no means to knock technology, but to rather say, hey, let's look at our process first and start there before we go and spend the recruiting dollars on some new technology. Let's look at how we're hiring. So I'm doing a lot of talking about the hiring process here, not just recruiting, because I do think the hiring process is a team effort, and a lot of times it just gets kind of drilled down to the recruiting team, and the other people involved with it aren't necessarily brought into that discussion. So when we look at this, what are we talking about? Again, we're not looking for a magic solution to our process problems or lack of candidate problems, I should say. We want to start by looking inward rather than fixing it from the outside. So this process that I'm going to talk about, and it's not a specific process, but rather something that you could develop on your own, it standardizes what we call a culture of hiring. I'll explain that in a little bit as well. And then the whole idea of executive buy-in, any initiative that can affect other departments within your organization, they're only effective when they get led from the top down. And this is something that we've learned through implementing processes and in internal organizations that has been critical to the success of those processes, is making sure you have that executive buy-in. So the last part, right, like even how can you do this as a person of one? I know a lot of recruiting teams are small and it may be a one-person shop, and we're going to give some strategies in this demonstration or to talk to you a little bit about how you as one person can leverage this type of information to really influence the process within your company. So what is a culture of hiring? Really any team analogy works here, but I like to use the analogy of an orchestra. Everyone has to be on the same sheet of paper to make beautiful music. They have to be playing on a set of instruments that are in tune. They have to be playing in the same tempo, the same key. If all of these things are not being done, even the most talented musicians in an orchestra are going to make music that sounds horrible. And I like to think of that as hiring. If everyone doesn't understand exactly what is going on in the hiring process, you're not going to make that magic. So we define culture of hiring as an approach to talent acquisition in which every person that touches a candidate from sourcing through the first 90 days of employment knows exactly the impact of their role in that process and the impact of that hire on the organization. So things to really point out here, it's every person that touches a candidate from sourcing through the first 90 days. So we're not stopping here at once the recruiter gets the offer letter signed, but we start talking about how do we retain those employees, and a lot of that has to do with what happens in those first 90 days of employment. So the culture of hiring really stresses that anyone that touches a candidate or applicant knows exactly what they are supposed to do. So recruiting can't own hiring alone. In fact, I would say recruiting does not own hiring, they own recruiting. There's tons of stakeholders in our process. There's different departments, There's different systems, different applicant systems, different background investigation systems, and a lot of times those systems don't even talk to each other. There's biases, which we've heard about in previous presentations, different opinions of different people in the process. So again, this is a real team sport here when we talk about hiring. But sourcers, recruiters, talent acquisition folks, we are the experts. And it is our job to lead this process. I love the GIF on the left because I've seen this a ton in my career that, it's really easy to point out problems, but it's very difficult to bring solutions to those problems. And in recruiting, we have the benefit of having data at our fingertips. Scarcity is something that we talk about every single day in recruiting. I specialize in the defense space. So all of our people have to have security clearance. It's an incredibly scarce market. But what we find is effective is not to just sit there and continually be talking about how we can't find people because they quote unquote don't exist. Scarcity can't be an excuse because at the end of the day, we have to find the people, but scarcity is a data point that we should be pointing to in all of our recruiting and process discussions. This is a huge opportunity for small teams, so recruiting teams of 1 or 2 people, being able to leverage this data and bring it to the boardroom and talk about how this data really should be influencing the way that we recruit and hire people. I'm sure everyone can relate to a bullet point on this slide. I'm not going to go through them all, but we've all lost hires due to non-scarcity issues. It's just been a painful process for candidates, or candidates don't want to take, they don't want to do take-home exams, or coding challenges, or it's been a really frustrating process. Or the one on here that drives me nuts is the clarity of job duties. Just we're working off the wrong requisition, or there was a bullet point in the requisition that shouldn't have been there, and it caused us to lose a hire. So these are non-scarcity related issues, but they are very process-based issues that I want to use to leverage how to build your own process here. Going back to the idea of a culture of hiring, it's, again, does everyone in your process know exactly what to do and exactly why they are doing it? And, it's really important here to think outside of people that are recruiters or sourcers or even HR folks, but really focus on anyone that's going to have any sort of interaction with that candidate's success throughout the process. So when you hold a mirror up to your hiring team, first of all, I think some people that are in the hiring process don't even realize they're part of the hiring process or part of the hiring team. So when you hold that mirror up, obviously sourcing and recruiting, we should know exactly what we're supposed to be doing and why we're doing it. But does the hiring manager know exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it? Do they know the exact job description we're looking for? I've definitely been involved in hiring processes where the hiring manager doesn't know the salary that the candidate is being offered. Now, from a process standpoint, how can a hiring manager interview a candidate if they don't know what the expectation of salary is going to be? Are they interviewing them for a senior role, a junior role? It just is a big red flag in the process that we've seen happen a lot. Interview team, especially in this day and age with COVID, are they prepared? Are they on the same sheet? What I see a lot of times is somebody on the interview team that, this is the 10th job that they have. Their job is not to interview people. Their job is to deliver software to a customer. They get pulled from their day and they get said, hey, they get told to be a part of this interview process. Has that person been coached on how to interview? Are they prepared for the interview? Do they know the questions to ask? Do they know the goal of why we're hiring? And when I say, do they know the goal of why we're hiring, every hire has some sort of financial impact to the company. Whether you're in the business that I'm in, where every vacancy literally means lost dollars for every hour it's vacant, or you're in a software development industry where you can't release your products quick enough because you don't have the staff to code those projects. So, all of this, does the team know the sense of urgency? Again, going to the COVID example of how we're all doing video interviews, I have the honor of sitting in on a lot of interviews, and to be completely honest, I've been astonished by what I've seen some interviewers do. I see a lot of this. Camera to the side, the person typing this way, and the candidate is looking to the side of the face of the interviewer. Just takes a quick discussion to tell the interview team, hey, this is the way we need to conduct ourselves in the interview process, and this is why we're doing it. Another thing, like with human resources and the whole process in general, but have you gone through your hiring process from start to finish? Have you pretended to be a candidate? Have you seen how hard it is to apply to your jobs, or how easy it is to apply to your jobs, and how the process works? Just looking at things like this, there's so much efficiency to be gained, and it literally costs no money. Just go through your process, look at it and say, why are we doing this? Why are we having them fill out a long form application before we even interview them? If that's not legally required, let's do it the other way around. So things start kind of, light bulbs go off when you go through your own process. One thing that I see all the time is when I was doing some business development, I would go through different websites and see how long it would take me to get to the actual job on a website. Some websites, it's like 10 clicks before you even get to the job listing. So these are all things that really can influence your hiring process. This is a great one too, rolling out the red carpet for candidates. No offense, but nobody wants to work at your company. This isn't because they don't want to work there, it's because you don't have a big brand. Most of the businesses out there are small businesses. And I feel like a lot of times hiring teams want the candidate to want to work there, but the reality is it's the other way around. You need to roll out the red carpet for your candidates that are going through the process. We have a client that the CEO hand writes or writes an email, but it's a new email every time to every single person that she wants to give an offer to. And it's a very thoughtful, long email. The candidates feel incredibly wanted by that company. But I think too, from us being recruiting and advisors and looking at our organization, it's very important for them to understand that most companies aren't Amazon, they're not Google, they don't have brands like that. And most likely you don't have a lot of candidates knocking down your door. So building this culture of hiring, rolling out the red carpet to the candidates, making them feel wanted through the process, making them feel welcome. And a lot of that is by just informing and coaching the team that is currently working in the hiring process. I talked a little bit about this, but looking at the interview team as part of the hiring process. This quote at the bottom I love: unexpressed expectations are the quickest way to miscommunicate hiring goals. If you are not expressing to every single person in the process what they're supposed to do, they are not going to know what to do. And I think a lot of hires get lost because of that. So looking at the interview team, there's some things in here about bias as well, but do they understand the requirements of the job? Does the person conducting the interview understand what you are hiring for and what makes a qualified candidate? Have they read the job description? Is everyone on that sheet of music? What interview training have they been given? Do they understand how to conduct a proper interview? Do they understand, how to eliminate bias through that process? Again, I mentioned this, but do they understand the level of salary that's being offered for the position, and does that align with the person that they're interviewing? This is a great one for bias. I see this not being followed, and it's a really great strategy. There should be the same baseline of questions being asked to every single candidate. And you do not stop or make any decision on the interview until you get through all of those baseline questions. It's a great way to eliminate bias, but also, if somebody has a bad answer to question 1 and 2, but they have an incredible answer to question 4 and 5, what if you stopped at question 3 and you just moved on? So it's just very important to go through this as a process and make sure, the whole interview team understands what they're supposed to do and how to do it. have they prioritized their role as interviewer around other duties? What I mean by that is, does the interviewer understand the importance of this interview against the importance of their day-to-day activities? Most companies don't have people that all they do is interview. It's usually someone's third, fourth, fifth priority. So have they prioritized this role as an interviewer around the other duties that they have to manage throughout the day? And then the big one, do they understand the timeliness, the timeline for feedback? So going back to the point about technology, is the next great technology going to fix this? Probably not. Bringing more candidates into a process that is not optimized, it's going to make the process worse, or at least it's going to highlight the inconsistencies in the process that you already have. So again, before looking for the magic bullet, you should always be looking at, okay, how can we fix our internal process to make sure that we are aligned, in this culture of hiring, so when we do bring new technology in, it's going to work with our existing process. Now, the big part of this is, how do we get the executives involved? Because none of this is going to matter if it's just the recruiting team shouting upwards saying, hey, this is what we want you guys to do. It has to come from the executive level down. So the hiring managers that feed into recruiting understand that this is the process coming from the leadership. So the best way to tie this in is, what is this costing to your company? What is a disconnected process costing your company? Recruiting resources are not never ending. And it's not only a labor cost, there's a major opportunity cost when recruiting is going down a rabbit hole over here. They can't do all of this work that may be over here. So it's very important to understand, what is the bandwidth of the recruiting department? And if there is an opportunity cost beyond just the hourly labor of those recruiters. So the disconnected process could also be, project delays, overworked staff leading to attrition. You can't hire onto one of your delivery teams, so everyone's working overtime, and those engineers, developers, whatever, start to quit. So that's a big one. So lost revenue is the best way to get that executive buy-in. Know your data in recruiting. And when I say your data, forget what the industry says. I learned this the hard way. I report industry data up to the executives all the time and said, well, we don't care about that. What we care about is this. So start by understanding what matters to your leadership. And I'm pretty sure it's going to have to do with money in some way or another, lost revenue, gained revenue, something to that effect. So the key is to tie the hiring performance into company performance. Tie your hiring data into company performance data. I know I'm a little short on time here. Do I have a few more minutes?
Yeah, you're good, Tom. Go. You can go like 5 more minutes.
Okay, thanks. So I'm going to give this example. This is a very easy one to understand. And the business that I'm in is it's basically staff augmentation within the Department of Defense. So for every hour my clients have a person in the seat, they make money. For every hour they don't, they lose money. It's not that they didn't gain that money, it's that they literally lost it. Once that hour is gone, they could never get it back. So this chart on the right is something that it's a crude example, but it's really what they care about. I know this because I've sat in the boardroom with them where they've talked about a chart like this. The top line is their budgeted revenue that they have access to. So every line, this is basically the number of hours that they can bill if they have someone in the seat. The bottom line is what they really did. And the only difference between these two lines are vacancies. So if you're not getting all of these hours, it's because you don't have somebody in the seat. So to this organization, what matters to them is, how close are we to the actual revenue that we have allocated to our company if we only have a butt in the seat? They care about fill rate. They don't care about time to hire. Time to hire doesn't matter to this organization. A better metric would be, how often do we fill positions by the time we need to fill that position, or filled by vacancy date. So if I'm going to talk to this organization about, time to hire or offer acceptance rate, they're not going to care. They want to know about time when needed. How often are you filling the positions as close to the time we need those positions filled? So when you're bringing the data into the executive level to talk to them about this, make sure you understand what are the revenue decisions that matter to them. How does recruiting tie into that discussion? And just 2 more slides here, but the majority of the hiring time workflow happens pre-job posting and post-submittal. So it really is out of the control of recruiting. Recruiting isn't really involved with pre-job posting, and a lot of times they're not involved post-submittal. So get KPIs around the hiring team, not just recruiting. So, what is an acceptable amount of days to get feedback on submittals? How many interviews are rescheduling? How many jobs are you closing because the requirements are incorrect? How long does it take from a submit to an interview to an offer? What does that look like? These are all metrics that have nothing to do with recruiting and nothing to do with the recruiting performance team, but they all fall under the umbrella of time to hire, which everyone talks about. So again, it's just important to have all of the KPIs aligned, not only with recruiting, but also to your hiring process, and whoever's in charge of that part of the process should have their own KPI. In summary, it's all about getting everyone on the same page with the process and what they're supposed to be doing in the process. Don't have people in the hiring process that don't understand explicitly what the goal is. Gather and report all the recruiting data, and then develop KPIs around the departments that touch the applicant journey. And yeah, this is a way to change yourself from being more of a delivery function into being a little bit more of an advisor to the business, rather than just kind of filling orders, but using this data to advise and help the company meet their goals. That's it. That's all I got.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. We have no questions coming in, but if you want to stay around and stick in the chat,
sure.
I can let you know. But with that being said, I'm going to bring in the one, the only Dean. Let's see if Dean's going to show up.